There we go. Got the audio working. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Noobie Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Holritz, and it is good to have you with us. Once again, this is actually the second episode we've recorded today, so we're just knocking them out. The Noobie Photographer Podcast is dedicated to simplifying both photography and photography business for new photographers. So if you're in your first, let's say, 3 years of business, or maybe you're even just trying to get your business off the ground, this is the podcast for you. 15, 20-minute episodes and information that's super applicable, easy to go and take and apply to your business right away so that you can build a healthy, strong business. And we're actually starting with a series called I Wish I Knew. And I'm having established photographers come on the show and share a big idea, a principle, a concept that they wish they knew a bit more about when they first started their photography business so that you can save time as you're starting yours. And it is truly a privilege to have with me on the show today, LaJoy Cox. Thank you so much, LaJoy, for coming to hang out with me again, actually.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, and I say again, of course, I have to break the fourth wall here for everybody listening in who may not be listening to or watching the Bokeh podcast. But for anybody who's not familiar, I do run another podcast, the Bokeh Podcast, B-O-K-E-H podcast. I've got it flashed up down there on the screen. You can also go to bokehpodcast.com. And LaJoy came on the show. Wow, has it been 6 months ago, LaJoy? It's been a little bit.
I think it's been about a year.
Has it been that long? Time runs together with so much going on. You know what that's like. And
yes.
But nonetheless, what we'll do for everybody listening in is we'll link to LaJoy's podcast episode in the show notes at noobiepodcast.com. And you can go check that out. Make sure that you do. And you can learn a little bit more about LaJoy. And it's a little bit of a longer form podcast. Today's show, 15, 20 minutes. And we're going to talk about what LaJoy wished she had maybe known a bit more about starting her photography business. LaJoy, will you just briefly introduce your brand to all of the listeners first?
Yes, my name is LaJoy Cox. I started my company, which is LaJoy Photography, about 10 years ago. We've gone through a rebrand. We have traveled the world. We've done a little bit of everything. And then I also opened another company called The First Look Photography, and soon to be opening a third company. So we're busy.
While also planning your wedding too. Like you've got so many different moving parts. It's wild.
Yes.
Yeah, I was telling you this before we got started, but I feel your pain. We've got multiple brands that we're juggling as well. And I'm certainly not getting married, but my daughter actually just started driving on her own yesterday. So I'll count that as a stressful enough situation on top of everything else. Yeah.
And your insurance rates just went through the roof.
I was looking at that yesterday. Yeah. And it went up by like 25%. So that was a pretty nice little jump.
Yes.
But we'll get back to photography. I'd love to know, Joy, what one big idea, principle. I'm a huge fan of kind of key principles that drive life, drive a healthy business. What's a key principle or idea that you wish you'd known a little bit more about when you started your photography business?
I think the biggest thing is going to be networking. When I started my company, I had no clue that getting to know other people that were in the same industry would help me grow my business. It just didn't make sense to me. It's like, I need new clients. I don't need to know who these other people are who do the same thing, because they're competition technically.
Right. Yeah. And I'm curious actually, because a lot of photographers talk about being introverted in nature. Do you kind of categorize yourself as an introvert as well?
I am a huge introvert. I will go to an event, and within the first hour, I'm the life of the party. I'm talking to everyone. Okay. And then hour and a half hits and I'm like, okay, I'm going back into my shell. I'm ready to go home.
That's so funny. It sounds almost identical. When I was like much earlier in my career and I was in the photography, I was photographing weddings, but then going to industry events and even to like big industry events like WPPI. And I'd go into one of these parties and I wasn't used to a party scene either. So like loud music's playing, a ton of people crammed into a small space. And it didn't even take me an hour and a half. It took me probably 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And I was like, I've got to step out of the room. So I totally understand what you're saying. So
yeah, it's really hard.
Well, and so kind of playing on that idea, when it comes to this idea of networking, whether it's going to a networking event for industry vendors or any other opportunity where you're connecting with a group of people, photographer get together, for example, as an introvert, it makes it that much more complicated. And yet there is opportunity through valuable relationships to not only grow as individuals, as individual business owners, but also to grow a business. And so let's just, well, actually, before we talk about practical application, what was the turning point for you? Whatever the timeline for your business is right now, at what point were you like, you know what, I need to start to prioritize this networking a bit more?
I started to need second shooters. I started to start weddings, and as I got into that industry, I realized that there are groups out there that you can join and you can talk to people who are going through the same thing you're going through.
Yeah.
They're looking for second shooters. You're looking for second shooters, and that's a great way for you guys to get to know each other and make that connection and start building your companies at the same time.
How many years into business did that realization happen?
Sadly, it was about 3 years.
Okay.
I was shooting all of my events by myself. And then I was like, you know what? I need to start meeting people. I met this one girl, me and her kind of hit it off. And she introduced me to the world of networking. And I kind of went from there.
Okay. So I'd love to know, and certainly for the sake of the listeners, for the sake of practical application, ultimately to their new photography business, how did this change the way that you ran your business? You mentioned to me ahead of time, actually, in fact, that you had kind of 3 big ways that you made change in the way you ran your photography business as a result of this realization. What were those?
The biggest ways were I was attending more events, which means I was meeting more people within the industry. Everyone else was an introvert as well. So it wasn't as overwhelming because it's like they're scared to be here too. Now
Yeah.
we have that connection with each other. We can then go off and sit in the corner when we're feeling a little nervous and say, "Oh my God, I'm so ready to leave." You too, and then that's a connection.
Yes.
The second way was referrals. Whenever I was booked for something and my client was like, "Oh my gosh, I really wanted to book you, but this is my wedding date," I could now send those referrals to other people. And I started to receive more referrals, which in turn increased business and increased bookings.
Mm.
And then the third was my social media presence. And it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, but the more photographers that were following me, the more of their clients or the more of their connections were following me as well. Because now not only are they looking at my work, but everyone who follows them is looking at my work as well.
So I want to, and first of all, I love that just the simplicity and practicality of each of these points. Let me go back to the first one. And I was taking notes, kind of old school here in the notebook. So I'm looking at my notebook, but you said the first thing was attend more events. Is there something that you would recommend to a new photographer who does have the introverted tendencies to get over that hump and get to that first couple of events to make it a little bit easier for themselves?
Make it a learning experience. So the conferences and things that are coming up, you want to make sure that you're learning more, and that's the best way possible to meet new people. When you're going and you're all going for that same goal, I want to learn more about this aspect of photography. They have different courses at different conferences. Maybe you want to learn more about lighting, and then everyone else in the room is learning the exact same thing. You're networking with those people. Whenever
Right.
I teach a course, I tell them, hey, start trading Instagram pages right now. Start following each other so that you guys can ask questions about something you may have missed or something you didn't understand, and you can help each other grow within the same thing.
That totally makes sense. So just understanding that on the other side of a little bit of discomfort is the opportunity to grow as a business owner, certainly as an individual, as a
Yes,
photographer. That's really good practical advice. I know, I mean, and it really applies to life too, right? Like there are still
it does.
actively in my life at this point, personally and professionally, there are certain things that make me uncomfortable or that I don't really feel like doing, but I know that if I just do the thing, on the other side of that is benefit, sometimes significant
Yes.
benefit if I just push through. So that's a good reminder. Referrals. And it really, this is, I guess, related to the first point as well. We go to these networking events. We have an opportunity to connect with photographers, and certainly for the sake of referrals, as you pointed out. How do we make sure that those connections are not like fake, for lack of a better word, surface level, kind of BS? Because I've been to countless networking meetings over the years, and like, when you're talking to somebody who's just playing a role, like they're dead in their eyes, the tone of their voice
Yes.
it sounds totally fake. How do you, as a photographer, And how do you recommend to the listening photographers, how do you go about being more intentional, I guess, and being genuine, for lack of a better word, in those interactions?
I think it's just like dating. Like you're going to the bar, you're going to the club, you're
Yeah.
going to meet this person. Are you going to talk to the person that looks like they're really not interested in talking to you and try and make that meaningful connection to then give them your number? Probably not. So think about this in the same way as I'm going dating and I'm going to look at these few photographers. I've talked to 3 people, and this one person I have a strong connection with because we are in both shooting maternity photography. We're both really trying to grow and expand our natural lighting as well as our off camera flash, and we're trying to get an idea of where we fit within the industry, and maybe just maybe we can help each other, maybe we can attend shoots together. I think when you're not thinking about it so much as competition and you're thinking about it as you're making a connection for a relationship,
Yeah.
I think the networking works better.
That totally makes sense. So the intention, just a very simple intention, which is I'm trying to create a relationship here. This isn't just about, I know this is an old school reference, but like handing a business card to somebody. It's about trying to create like an intention to create a genuine relationship. Certainly with some people, that relationship will go deeper than others, but that intention, I think, I mean, I maybe from your experience, you can speak as well, LaJoy. I know that, again, having conversations with people, I can hear it in their tone of their voice. I can see it in the amount of attention that they're paying to me. They're not like quickly glancing back and forth between my face and their phone or their watch or whatever it might be. You can tell when somebody's engaged, which means that we should be paying that much more attention to how we're engaging with others.
Right. So if you're talking to them and they're looking past you and you can clearly see that they're not giving you eye contact, they're looking at something behind you.
Yeah.
That's probably not the person for you.
Red flag.
You should probably avoid that relationship at all costs.
That totally makes sense. I love the comparison, actually. I think that's great. The last point that you made, social media presence, and of course the relationship with that presence and the relationships with other photographers and vendors. Is there a particular way that you have collaborated with other photographers, or maybe more relevant, other vendors, for the sake of kind of a value add to your social media following through social media, Instagram, Facebook, or otherwise?
I would say sharing and tagging. A lot of photographers, I've come to find out, don't want to share their photos with all of the vendors from the wedding day. But for me, I walk up to the makeup artist. I introduce myself. I introduce myself to the videographer. I introduce myself to the planner if I've never worked with them before. The DJ, no matter who it is, you never know if these people are going to then talk about you to someone else later, and it could lead to a job, or not to mention another opportunity. It can be a speaking engagement, it can be anything. So just, I guess, being courteous and just being a regular, normal person. I know it's hard for us introverts, but walking up and saying, "Hey, how are you? My name is LaJoy, and I'm the photographer for the day. So if y'all want photos, here's my business card. Make sure you email me and remind me in case I forget to tag you or send them out to you."
Okay. It seems that there's a lot of relevance to the point you were making previously too. Like if there's a genuine intention to create a relationship, then there's naturally going to be a genuine intention to figure out ways to add value to that relationship, which of course parlays to working together with a vendor to create content, or to put an event on together or otherwise. So yeah, that totally makes sense. I love the simplicity and the practicality of these recommendations. And I have to give you a shout out and a little bit of a shout out to our conference as well. You're actually going to be, and it's funny, even as I'm listening to you speak here, I'm so glad that you get to be on this speaker list for the Noobie Photographer Conference, or the Noobie Conference. And I'll pop this up on screen for everybody listening in, so that you can see this. But LaJoy is one of the few speakers that's going to be a part of this conference for new photographers. It's coming up January 10th and 11th here in Chattanooga. But LaJoy, you have such just a wonderful teaching presence. I need to work on this. You have like your communication style is so calm and even keeled and easy to listen to. I absolutely love it. And I think our listeners and attendees ultimately will as well. You're going to be speaking a little bit about financial management there at the conference, which is something that I still probably need help with myself 20 years into this industry. And I'm really excited for you to be a part of that. But will you also just remind our listeners one more time where they can find and follow you, maybe ask a question or two via Instagram online?
Yes. Well, first, I want to say I am so happy to be a part of the Noobie Conference. I can't wait until next year. If you are looking for me, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram under LaJoy Photography LLC. And then you can also find me at www.lajoyphotography.com.
Oh, I realized that I muted myself there. Perfect. I was putting that all up on screen. So for those of you listening in, you can see LaJoy, LaJoy photography.com, and then LaJoy Photography LLC. And of course, we'll put this in the show notes at newbiepodcast.com. Thank you again, LaJoy. Thanks for not only your time here, but for being willing to be part of the upcoming conference. And again, for anybody who's listening in, truly our privilege. And make sure those of you listening in and watching, newbieconference.com, go check it out, register before it's too late. And everybody have an absolutely wonderful day.